the words of Torah that we say today should be Refuah Shlema, the mother Yudit Yeta Bat Elka, and also Refuah Shlema Chana Bat Simafega, Rabbi Farchi's wife. She's having surgery today, and Be'ezat Hashem, it'll be a successful surgery. They don't know enough till the surgery happens to see what's going to be, treatment-wise, but Be'ezat Hashem, be Besorot Tovot. So I'll get back to it in the main shiur, but in this week's parasha, right, we have that, you have the Kriyat Yam Suf, you have the splitting of the sea, and then what does it say right after Az Yashir? It says, Vatetze Miriam HaNeviah, Achot Aharon Matov Bi'ada, comes out Miriam with the drums. Vatetzena Kol HaNashim B'Tupim U'Cholot, come out all the ladies with tambourines and drums. Vatan Lahem Miriam, what does Miriam say? Shiru La Hashem, we need to sing to God. Ki Ga'o Ga'a, He showed us His greatness. Sus V'Rochevo, Rama Vayam, the horse and its rider, he drowned in the sea. Now, that's a pasuk in Az Yashir, and if you're going to pick any pasuk, why did the women specifically pick that one? And we'll get back to talking about the role of the women, etc. But I once heard a nice idea. You might not appreciate 1,000,000% that analogy, but the lesson is so true and so powerful. Why of all psukim do the ladies sing Sus V'Rochevo Rama Vayam? What does it mean that the horse and its rider drowned together? You might ask, who deserves to be drowned? Who deserves to be drowned? The rider. Did the horse do anything wrong? Did the horse oppress the Jewish people? Did the horse punish anybody? No. So there's a seat over here. Feel free. But why is it that the horse had to drown? And the rabbis explain it was specifically the women that sang about this. Why? Because sometimes, and I've heard from many, not necessarily religious women, or not religious yet, women, I don't understand. How come we have to sit in the back? How come we have to sit on the side? How come we don't have, and we'll discuss that Be'ezat Hashem in the main shiur. Everybody has their role to play. But ultimately, Sus V'Rochevo Rama Vayam, as much as the rider and the Egyptian taskmaster did bad and needs to be punished, so much so they need to be drowned, they need to be killed, it's a partnership. It's a partnership. The rider and the horse, they go hand in hand, they go together. It's a partnership. And it's the same thing when it comes to a husband and a wife. It's a partnership. You might have the husband, he gets all the glory, he's the one that goes to shul, he's the one that gets up, makes a speech, and Kol Kvuda Bat Melech Penima, the woman, she stays at home, she's sanua, she's modest, she's not out there, she's not getting up and speaking in front of everybody and doing what Western society would say is, equality. And again, in the main shiur, we'll get back to the different roles, Be'ezrat Hashem. But Miriam and all the women, they understand, Sus V'Rochevo Rama Vayam. The rider can't get anywhere without the horse. The husbands aren't getting anywhere without the women. They're not getting anywhere. When we opened up our Bet Midrash, BBM, I was doing a ladies' class, maybe 70, 80 ladies, Sudah Shlishit, one Shabbat, and I said, the success of the Bet Midrash is going to depend on you ladies. And they were like, isn't it a men's-based medrash? And I'm like, yeah, but the success of the Bet Midrash depends on you. And they were like, why? What are you talking about? I said, well, your husbands right now, they don't really go to shul, or they don't go to learn. And if I tell them, come once a week come. You can be like, yeah, yalla, get out of bed. Or you can be like, I really need your help with the rota, and I really need your help in the morning to dress the kids, and to do this, and to help them, and to feed. You can either push them to go, or you can hold them back from going. The success of the rider can only get to where he gets to get to if he has the horse, and it's a 1%, 1,000,000% equal partnership. It goes hand in hand. And that's what Miriam, of all the psukim, Miriam and the women, they sing, they understand. And they're almost setting into place. Yeah, the men got up and they sang this whole long song, and the men are the one. No. It's the ladies. It's the ladies that have just as much, if not. I remember hearing from Rabbi Eli Mansour, he says the ladies get more reward. Why do the ladies get more reward? You send your husband out to learn for an hour. Your husband goes to learn for an hour. How much credit do you get? An hour. He goes, he's looking for parking. He makes a coffee. Someone said to him, did you see the news? Can you believe what this one said? I got this funny meme. Maybe 40 minutes. Right? You're getting an hour credit. The husband's getting 40 minutes credit, 45 minutes. Hopefully an hour, but realistically not so much. Sus v'rochevo rama vayam. They go hand in hand. It goes together. So don't for a second think like he's getting the credit. In Shammai, it's a 1,000,000% equal partnership. Sus v'rochavot, a rider. Now, again, we're not comparing the ladies to the horses. That's not what we're saying. But ultimately, it's the ladies are the drivers. The ladies are the one. And when we get back to the part, Be'ezat Hashem, of the parasha, we'll tie back into that. We're up to the part of this book, Otzer Dinim L'Isha Lebat, of Brachot and Hagomel. So he says, when it comes to a woman teaching her children Brachot, you would think, oh, don't use Hashem's name. You're 100% allowed to use Hashem's name. It's not a problem, right? How old is this guy?
Yeah, 1.5.
1.5. So you're doing Netilat Yadayim?
Yeah.
And you teach them the Brachot. Baruch Ata. It's not a problem to say Adon and then I say the name. Why? Because that's what you're teaching him. Right? Hopefully after a while they know. So you say Ado and then...
Can you say Amen afterwards as well?
I don't think it's a problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Usually in my experience, at least with my kids, they thought Amen part of the bracha.
Yeah.
They think that... Amen. Like they think that's part of the bracha. So sometimes it might be better not to say Amen because that will be less confused. But all right, Baruch Hashem. So, but it's not from a chinuch point of view. It's not a problem to say Shem u'Malchut, to teach the children the right way to say it. It says when it comes to bracha of Hagomel, women are obligated to say Hagomel if they've been saved from a serious sickness or after birth. It's considered sakana, and therefore women are obligated to say Hagomel. Ideally, she says it as soon as possible. With the women, a lot of times they'll make a kiddush for if they have a girl, and there's 10 men over there, say it. If they are making a Brit Milah, either by the Brit Milah, or if they have the Zohar, the Brit Yitzchak the night before, or Ashkenazim have the Shema Yisrael thing, although I don't think they necessarily have 10 men. The first time I was in Israel, my neighbor said, oh, come, it's the night before the Brit Milah. Sephardim, they do Brit Yitzchak, so I'm ready to say a whole Zohar, and they have like a bunch of kids with like these pekalach things. And I was like, I'd never been, and I was like, the only time I've seen pekalach is when they throw it at the chatan. I'm like, did they throw these at the baby? It's like, no. Might be that. I know it's mostly popcorn, but still, like, right? So if there's 10 men, women should say Hagomel over there. If a woman's in the Ezrat Nashim, there's a shul in Yerushalayim called Musayov. It's the Sephardi minion factory. I think the women get more involved than the men. They bid and they sell all the aliyot. And the women are bidding and they're screaming out stuff. You forgot this, right? I don't know if it's the same women who just sit there all day, every day, but it's amazing. If it was a woman in the Ezrat Nashim, she's able to say it as well. A husband should not say Hagomel for his wife unless they both travel together and the husband has in mind when he's saying at the Torah that he's saying Hagomel. A woman doesn't need to say Hagomel every time she travels, but the man does. He says that Chacham Ovadia held this, although most other poskim don't hold this. Chacham Ovadia held if you drive a drive that's more than 72 minutes, then you should say Hagomel. Nobody else really holds this. Remember in the shul when I lived in Israel, one guy used to go once a week to give a class in wherever it was, Netanya, Tveria, somewhere that was like an hour and a half drive. And every single week he said Hagomel, literally every week, because he's like, that's what Chacham Ovadia holds. Right? Most poskim don't hold like that, because if somebody lives in New York and they commute to New Jersey or vice versa, they'd be saying Hagomel every day, right? Or every Monday and Thursday and Shabbat. So most poskim don't hold like that, but that is what Chacham Ovadia holds. He says, so a man shouldn't say Hagomel for a woman. If a woman says Hagomel without there being 10 men there, b'di'avad, it's not ideal, but she would not have to go and repeat it. It says very interestingly, if there's a bad car accident and a woman saved from the car accident, whether people in the car were seriously injured or chas v'shalom even died, so the woman would not say Hagomel, right? The woman would not say Hagomel. Remember, a friend of mine came into yeshiva one day. I was learning yeshiva called Yeshiva Far Rockaway, and there was a lot of black ice, and he said like his car spun around like 7 times, and basically almost touched this other car. Like scariest thing. He went to our rabbi saying, "Do I need to say Hagomel?" What would you say? He said, "Nothing happened." He's like, "But I almost hit the guy." He's like, "Almost is almost." Like you wouldn't make a bracha and say Hashem's name for almost. Be thankful, give some tzedakah, whatever it might be. But you don't say a bracha for almost. Thank God you weren't in the car accident, even though it was very scary. It says a woman wouldn't say Hagomel for that.
Isn't Hagomel always for almost? Yeah,
to some extent, but somebody who actually was in the sickness, great question. Somebody who was sick, or a woman who gave birth, that's already, there's something happening with the sakana. right? Baruch Hashem. But it was more of a situation where it was very, very possible, right? I mean, it's, I guess, a random story, but yeah.
Sorry, when you say she wouldn't, what would she do then? If she was in a serious car accident?
She can make a sudat hoda'ah. She can make a thank you party. She can give charity. She can do certain things in the merit of Hashem doing this amazing thing that she got saved. Those are examples of things. Make a bracha party, but not necessarily use, or he even says sometimes if you want to say Agomel, you wouldn't use Shem Malchut. You wouldn't use Hashem's name. You would just say Baruch. Agomel Chayavim Tov.
Saying apply to men.
It doesn't discuss it. I think so as well, but I'm going to check.
If you're in anyone, if
No,
you're in a serious
I'm going to check because I'm not sure. I was thinking about that when I was doing halachot. He's going through. Could be the men do say it, but he's saying over here the women don't have that obligation to say it. Every single time a woman is in labor, but Ezat Hashem, Baruch Hashem, quite often, especially in today's day and age, thank God, it's all right. The Mishnah on Shabbat says, there's 3 reasons that a woman might pass away during childbirth. If they're not careful about nida, with nida, b'chala, hadakat haner. If they're not careful about lighting the candles, about hafrashat chala, separating the chala, and about the laws of family purity, that causes people to potentially. I remember when I was living in Israel, I walked in from Kolel, and I lived half a flight up in the building that I lived in Malot Afna, and I see my downstairs neighbor. He's literally trying to take out the light bulb as it's on. He's like, ow, ow. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, I need a light bulb. I'm like, okay, I'll get you a new one. I go to the closet again one. I'm like, is everything all right? He's like, no. I'm like, what happened? He's like, I had a baby. I'm like, Mazel tov, what was it? He's like, I don't know. What happened? He lived in a 1-bedroom. And my wife, I found that afterwards. She's like, my kids were playing by his house. He knocks on the door. My wife's going into labor. Can you watch my kids? Of course. Right? They're all playing by my house. Apparently, it went so fast, they didn't have time to get to the hospital. They only had a 1-bedroom, and the lights were out in the 1-bedroom. And they called Hatzalah. She was like, it was like the worst experience ever. I have a bunch of Hatzalah guys, this is before smartphones, on their Nokias, with the little screen, trying to shed as much light as possible. As she's having this baby, she's like, it was just horrific. And then afterwards, they rushed her to the hospital. And unfortunately, she lost loads of blood. If she was in the hospital, they would have taken care of that. She ended up being in the hospital for over a week, but we take for granted. You're in the hospital, and Baruch Hashem, it's okay. Or if Chas Shalom, there's complications, it's usually relatively simply curable. So, but yeah, it's a sakana. And therefore, you can get in a car. My brother had that. His wife went into labor maybe 10 minutes after Shabbat, or 10 minutes before Shabbat was coming in. So he calls the taxi, and the guy shows up, and now it's already Shabbat. And he says, I can't give you the money because I'm a Jew, but I left whatever it was, $20 over here, so just take it. The guy goes, oh, I know all about this stuff. I'm Jewish too. Technically, he would have been able to drive. He couldn't turn off the car. But it's a sakana, and therefore, even if you're able to drive somebody to the hospital on Shabbat, again, there's certain things you can and can't do. But when I went with my wife this time, it wasn't Shabbat yet. But when we got in the car, we had accepted Shabbat. Shabbat was about 9 o'clock, which means Shkia was about 9:15 when we got in the car. So when we got in, it was still not Shabbat, even though we accepted Shabbat, but we got there after Shabbat. Yeah. He says, when he's discussing making brachot and making parties, he says there's a minhag for making a sudat mitzvah and sudat simcha for a bat mitzvah. What do you think he's going to say? It's right, it's wrong, good thing, bad thing. Right. Everybody thinks Sephardi's are sexist, right? He says it's a beautiful thing, Baruch Hashem, definitely. You should make a suda, you should make a mitzvah. It needs to be done b'tzniut. You should have divrei Torah, you should have brachot. It's an amazing thing. This girl reached the age of, she's now responsible in mitzvot. It's an amazing thing, and therefore you should make a party for a bat mitzvah. The girls should, again, within reason, meaning sometimes there's pressure, and she did this, and she did that, and I need this, and I want that, and it's, one guy made an unbelievable bar mitzvah, and I went to the guy afterwards, I'm like, that was probably the nicest wedding I ever went to. It was amazing. But if you could afford it, enjoy the simcha. What else are you going to spend your money on if not smachot? But at the same time, there's the pressure that other people might feel, so you have to take that into account. Okay. but definitely you should make a Sudat mitzvah and a party for a bat mitzvah. You wouldn't say necessarily a woman, right? By a bar mitzvah, you'll sometimes have the men, they get up and they say, Baruch shepitrani mon shel zeh. Thank you, Hashem, I am no longer obligated in the punishment. The kid's bar mitzvah, now the punishment's on him, not on me, right? Women don't have that mitzvah to say Baruch shepitrani. Anyways, you're not using Hashem's name, but you wouldn't say Baruch shepitrani, right? He says when it comes to the brachot, in the month of Nisan, there's something called Birkat Ilanot, which we can discuss when we get to the month. Women are obligated to, they should also say that bracha. And he discusses when it comes to Birkat Chama, once every 28 years, the sun is in the same spot that it's in when Hashem created the world. It's a safek, and therefore a woman, it's a nice thing to do. She should hear it from a man, but she's not obligated to, it's a safek if she's obligated, and therefore better not to use Hashem's name. She should hear it from a man. So I thought we would discuss this week's parasha a few different ideas. Last week I was in St. John's Wood, and they gave me the topic, understanding the strength of the woman. Right? On a practical and Kabbalistic idea, what is the role of the women? I think this week's parasha, especially, we mentioned Miriam and the ladies, it's nice to discuss. Right? Kabbalistically, if you want to call it that. It discusses, obviously, at the beginning, Hashem created men and women together, right? Zacharon keva bara otam. Then Hashem puts Adam to sleep, and Hashem takes out of Adam on his ribs, and they say, why was it one of his ribs as opposed to anything else? And because, right, women are meant to come from the inside, meant to be more tzanua, more modest. I saw, I think it was Soloveitchik, who says, in creation, the later something was created, the greater it was. Right? You have Hashem creates the world, and on day number 5, he creates the birds and the fish. And on day number 6, he creates the animals, and then he creates humanity. Meaning everything, the later it was, the more set up the world was for, and the greater the creations were, right? The animals are greater than the birds and the fish, and the people are greater than animals. He says if women were created last, it means that's because women are on a much higher level than the men. Right? I don't want to get too far off topic, but the idea of the mitzvot in the Torah is to make us God-like, to make us emulate Hashem. I think we discussed before Tisha B'Av, what is holiness? Right? Sound familiar? Anybody? No? What is holiness? Maybe we didn't discuss it. We'll go there. Right? Must be about 13 years ago now, a little over 13 years. The day my daughter was born, and I'm living in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim. When she was born, the cord was wrapped around her neck twice. Right? She was this little purple. You know what I mean? And right away they unwrap it and they start smacking. I'm like, what the heck are you doing? She was born 10 seconds. Like, no. This gets the blood flowing. Then they realized that wasn't the only reason she was choking. She also drank the meconium. So they quickly shove in a vacuum and they start sucking out everything. And Baruch Hashem, she was okay. So I'm in Yerushalayim. I want to go say thank you to Hashem. Where's the best place to go? Kotel. I go to the Kotel. I think it was a Thursday. They're throwing sweets. There's bar mitzvahs. And I'm walking up the ramp to leave. And I hear two guys talking in English. One's wearing a kippah suruga. One's wearing a leather kippah. I'm assuming they're somewhat religious. They didn't just pick up the cardboard. Now they don't have cardboard ones. Those are the best ones. They have like these cloth ones, but they didn't just pick up the cardboard ones. And the first guy goes to the other guy, so, they say this is the holiest place in the world. The other guy goes, yeah, that's what they say. He says, tell me honestly, what'd you think? And the guy goes, honestly? And the first guy goes, yeah, me too. I don't get it. So I felt the need to butt in. So I tapped the guy on the shoulder. I'm like, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Yeah. And I point. The wall was literally, the kotel was like where the door is. I'm like, let's say the kotel is not holy. It's not holy. According to you, what is holy? And they were like, I don't know. I said, so how could you decide if the kotel is holy or not? I said, right over there behind that wall, right over there, that's where Avraham Avinu brings Yitzchak as a sacrifice. Right behind that wall was Yaakov, where our father Jacob has the dream with the ladder that God promises him, I'll take care of your children for all of eternity. I said, I don't know about you. I'd say that's pretty holy. And they were like, oh, I guess. And it got me thinking. We say the Kotel is holy, the Sefer Torah is holy, the Rabbi is holy, the Rebbetzin is holy. What is holiness mean? We like to use words like, she's very spiritual. Really? What does she do? No, I don't know. Tell me. lights candles, but what does that mean? Right? We use these words, but what do they actually? And feel free to disagree. But I thought about it, and I thought to myself, what does it mean, holiness? Holiness means being close to Hashem. You go to the kotel to feel close to Hashem. The rabbi is close to Hashem. The rebbetzin is close to Hashem. You do chesed, you feel close to Hashem. You go to shul to be close to Hashem. The Sefer Torah, learning Torah brings us closer to Hashem. Doing chesed brings us closer to Hashem. Feeds the neshama. That's what I think holiness is. So, that's also a very vague term. What does it mean to be close to Hashem? Are the people in Israel closer to Hashem than we are? Well, the way we measure closeness in physicality is proximity. Right? I'm sitting closer to her than I am to her. But when it comes to spirituality, they don't measure closeness in proximity. They measure it in likeness. What does that mean? In emulation. The Gemara says, Mahurachum, afatarachum. Just like God is compassionate, you be compassionate. God is forgiving, you be forgiving. God is giving, you be giving. God is thoughtful, you be thoughtful. Women are much more godlike than men. Women have a lot less mitzvot. What does it mean? Sha'asani kirtzono as opposed to shelo asani isha. Men have a lot more mitzvot. They have to work much harder to be closer to Hashem, to be more godlike, to be more caring, thoughtful. I hear the baby cry and I'm like, I'll fall asleep. It's a different way of looking at the world. I always give the example. If you've ever been to a wedding and the best man gets up to speak, it's not a speech, that's a roast. Right? They just get up there and they just take the mick out of the chatan. I love looking around because the guys are usually dying of laughter and the women are like mortified. I can't believe you just said that in public. Right? I'm over stereotyping, but if there was a best woman speech, it'd be like, I miss you so much, and you're stunning, and I love you, and you look so amazing. Right? They're not gonna be like, remember that time where you threw up, you had to hold your hair, and there was puke everywhere? Like, they wouldn't say that in public. Maybe behind closed doors, I don't know. But you're not gonna get up in public and just make fun of your... Because women are naturally more thoughtful, more caring, more compassionate. We have different roles to play. Right? The man, they say, Al Pi Kabbalah, is the mashpia. The man is the giver, and the woman is the receiver. On a very simple level. The man gives the zera, gives the sperm. The woman takes, and what does she do with it? She harnesses it, cultivates it, and creates this amazing thing called a baby. Right? So the man gives a little bit, and the woman nurtures it and gives life. Again, over stereotyping a bit, but the man goes to work, makes the money. The woman receives the money. What does she do with it? She then creates. She builds the house. But she's supposed to. That's the point. She's supposed to decide, right? What do the couches look like? I'm gonna make. She buys the clothing for the kids, right? If it was me, it would just like, be like, I don't know, Primark's the cheapest, but they're kids. They don't care, right? My wife spent like loads of money on like kids' shoes or clothes, and I'm like, they don't care. She's like, but I care, right? It doesn't make sense to a guy that why waste all this money on kids' clothes they're gonna grow out of in 2 minutes, but to a woman, it's like, this is a representation of me. And if they're put together and they look good, then that reflects upon me. That doesn't make sense to guys, right? We think and we talk very differently. I spoke by a chuppah, and I said to the kala, I said, did you go to the kotel before you got married? She's like, no. Do I have to? I'm like, you didn't have to, but it's highly recommended. It's important that before you get married, you get used to talking to a wall, right? One of my favorite memes, it says, ladies, if a guy says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. You don't need to remind him every 6 months. It's going to happen eventually. But we think and we talk very differently. Right? They tell a story, this guy got married. First month, things are going great. After 5 weeks, he thinks he might have done something wrong, but he's not sure. After 6 weeks, he knows he's done something wrong, but like all men, he has no idea. What did I do? Right? After 7 weeks, he's getting the cold shoulder. After 8 weeks, he's going, I don't understand. What did I do? His wife bursts out, how come you don't love me anymore? And she's crying and crying. He waits for her to calm down. He says, what are you talking about? Why do you think I don't love you? He's like, when's the last time you said I love you? She asks him. He says, I don't know. She says, you haven't said I love you in a month. He says, listen here, I love you, and if I change my mind, I'll let you know. Doesn't work, right? I always tell her, it doesn't work like that. The men are meant to give, right? And you need to constantly give compliments. And the women are meant to receive and take that and enhance it. Right? Hashem created us very differently because we have different roles to play. And it's supposed to be not so easy, if you will. It's supposed to be that we each need to give. you might get upset at me, but I always give the example. I said, women, they don't want the job to get done. Right? What does that mean? I said, the guy's about to walk out of this house and his wife says, I'm so overwhelmed. I need to do the rota and make the lunches and stop by the dry cleaning and take the kids to a doctor and do this. And what does every guy say? Ba'atzlacha. Okay. The guy comes home after a long day at work. His wife says, you're not going to believe it. Right after you left, 2 people knocked on the door. We're here to do chesed. They did everything. I was able to relax. What does the husband say to his wife? Great. So happy for you. So imagine the shoes on the other foot. The wife says, I'm going to be back in 3 hours. I want you to do the homework with the kids, bathe them, put on their pajamas, put away the laundry and the dishes, and She comes back after 3 hours. The guy says, you're not going to believe it. Right after you left, 2 people knocked on the door. We're here to do chesed. They did everything. I was able to watch the game. What's the wife going to say? I asked you to do it. Okay? Because women don't want the job to get done. They want you. They want the guy to show he cares, right? This is something I care about. I put in so much that makes no sense to a guy, right? No guy comes home and says, wow, the house is really clean today. I got a cleaner. Cleaner? I wanted you to clean, right? No guy's going to say that or thinks like that. As long as the job gets done. This couple came to me and the wife says, the whole day I'm with the kids. I told him I need 1 hour. 1 hour. What does he do? Puts on Disney Plus. He's like, well, as long as you got a break, what do you care? She's like, I also got to put on Disney Plus. He's like, I didn't want to say anything. I was thinking that, like, why'd you have to bother me? Because that doesn't make sense to a guy. We think, Baruch Hashem, very differently. But Hashem made us think differently because we have different roles to play. The job of the woman is to be the receiver, right? Friday night when you make challah. Right? How do you hold the challah? You hold the challah one on top of the other. One on top of the other. Which challah do you use Friday night? The bottom challah, right? Because the Friday night, it's Bo'i Kala Shabbat Malketa. I think the Ashkenazim as well. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. Bo'i Kala Shabbat Malketa. At night, Shabbat is considered feminine. Bo'i Kala Shabbat Malketa, right? You use the bottom challah. I'm just repeating, I don't know what this means. By the morning, you use the top challah. Right? You use the top challah because by the morning it's already more masculine. If you look in the tefillah, it says on Friday night, V'yanuchu ba ko yisrael mekadesh Hashemecha. It's feminine. In the morning, what do you say? V'yanuchu bo. If you daven the Friday night arbit, it's v'yanuchu ba. Shabbat morning, shachrit, what is it? V'yanuchu bo, because that's masculine. By mincha, according to most opinions, what do you say? V'yanuchu bam. Now it's already, there's this harmony. It's this togetherness. Right? So, Friday night, you use the bottom, it's the feminine. Right? When it comes to husband and wife in the bedroom, halachically, the ideal is the man, because the woman's the receiver, and it comes from on top, right? When it rains, the rain is considered masculine, and the adama is feminine. It's the ground, and it produces. It gives you all the fruit and all the trees and everything, because it receives, and then it takes the drops of rain and gives you much more. The woman's job is to receive. The man's job is to bring the ideology and the hashpa'ah and the shefa, if you will. That's why, I remember hearing from Rabbi Tatz, he said, the man decides what school the kids go to. The man decides what shul you're going to daven in. Everything else, that's the woman. Because the man has the general ashkafa and ideology, and the woman brings it to fruition. The woman decides what type of level of tzniut is going to be in the house, the level of kashrut, almost always where you're going on vacation, where you're going on holiday. The woman takes the ideas and then makes it happen. Brings it to reality. That's the job of a woman, right? If you're not fulfilling your purpose, it's very hard to be happy. It says in Mitzrayim, we're finishing off talking about Paro. It says Paro, what did he do? He made the men do women's work and the women do men's work. Right? You've heard that before? No. What does that mean? Oh, the women were carrying bricks and the men were sewing? It's not about that. It's much deeper than that. We mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Paro wanted to mess with their heads. He didn't want the people being happy. He wanted them being depressed and distraught and dejected. So what did he do? He made people not fulfill their purpose. You have a person, they're a people person. They love people. They're always schmoozing with everybody. Right? What happens? You tell them, you're going to be an accountant who sits here in this office all day. What did you just do to that person? You killed them. But it's a good job. But they're not fulfilling their purpose. They're not going to be happy. You take somebody who's very fashionable, wears amazing outfits, and you tell her, you're going to work in the hospital and you're going to wear the same scrubs every single day, day in, day out. It's a nice thing to be a nurse, but she's not able to express herself. And in certain ways, you killed her. You're giving her a job where she's doing certain things that's not what she's going to enjoy doing. She's not using her talent, her potential. She should be an interior designer, a graphic designer, whatever it might be. If she's a creative person, or do hair, or do whatever it might be, use her creativity. You make her do something she's not good at or she's not going to enjoy doing, you're killing her. That's what it means. Paro wanted to mess with the Jewish people. He made the men do women's work and women do men's work. He made sure that they weren't going to feel fulfilled. We have different roles to play. And one of the most important roles of the woman is the emunah. Bringing that into the home. In this week's parasha, it seems like the Bnei Yisrael are schizophrenic. What does that mean that they're schizophrenic? Parasha starts off. We just saw the 10 plagues. If I was to ask you on a level of 1 to 100, what's the level of bitachon the Jewish people have in Hashem after seeing the 10 plagues? 100. That's what I would have thought. What's the beginning of this week's parasha? Vahi b'shalach parot ha'am. We wait for Paro to send us out. It's chutzpah to leave without permission. We got invited in, we got to get invited out. Vahi b'shalach parot ha'am v'lo nacham Elohim derech eretz Pilishtim. God doesn't take us the way of the Pilishtim. Why? Ki karovu ki amar Elohim pen yenachem ha'am. Because God says, maybe they'll see war. Berotam melchama v'shavu Mitzrayim. They'll be scared. They'll run back to Egypt. They're going to be scared and run back to Egypt? Why would they be scared? Pen yenachem ha'am berotam melchama v'shavu. They just saw the 10 plagues. Where's their bitachon? And then what happens? The Egyptians start chasing after them. They come to Moshe. Are there not enough graves in Egypt? Why'd you bring us out here to die in the desert? What level does it sound like their bitachon of Hashem is on? Zero. 10 plagues, less than a week ago. Boom, 0. What happens? Kriyat Yamsuf. Kriyat Yamsuf. They're able to say, Ze Eli Vanveu. Obviously Hashem has no physicality, but they're able to almost point and say, Ze, the Gemara tells us, Ra'ata shivcha shebayam. The lowest maidservant saw at the ocean, Mashalor Ra'a Yechezkel Muzi. What Yechezkel ben Muzi, the prophet, and why they pick him? Because he discusses Maaseh Merkabah. He discusses creation of the world. One of the greatest prophets saw, they were on a higher level. It always bothered me. What does it mean, shivcha shebayam? You've heard that terminology, Ra'ata shivcha shebayam. Everybody was slaves in Egypt, and now everybody is free. There's no shivcha shebayam. What does it mean, the maidservant? It means the chora, the lowest of the low. Even the lowest, most irreligious, if you want to call them that, most... They just saw the splitting of the sea. What level of bitachon would you say they're now on? 100 million, whatever the highest possible is. 3 days later. There's no water. They come to Moshe, and what are they saying? Why'd you bring us out here to die in the desert? You just saw Kriyat Yamsuf, the greatest miracle of all time. And you're complaining? What level is their bitachon on now? 0. Hashem shows Moshe Rabbeinu a tree. They find water, it's bitter. Take the bitter tree, put it in the bitter water, and the water became sweet. Sham lo chokom mishpat b'sham yisrael. Boom. Water for millions of people to drink. What level of bitachon would you think they're now on? 100. Miracle. The water became sweet. They come to Moshe a little while later. We ran out of the matzah. We're starving over here. What were you thinking? It's not a good political move if you want to be our leader to bring millions of people into the desert. How are we supposed to eat? They're complaining. What's the level of bitachon? 0. Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Hashem. Hashem says, no problem. And boom, he makes it that you have manna from heaven. In the history of the world, food from heaven. Tasted like whatever you wanted. And it was low in fiber. No, okay, I don't know. Right? Everybody stayed skinny. Everybody stayed healthy. They didn't need to use the toilet. The best thing you could ever imagine. What level is their bitachon now? 1 million. What happens a little while later? They have no water. Moshe, what'd you do? Right? And you get the Be'er Miriam. Water coming out of a rock for millions of people to drink all day, every day. What's their level of trust in Hashem? Got to be 1 million. Amalek comes to fight against them, and right before him, what does the pasuk say? The Jewish people, these words are just flabbergasting. What do the people say? Hayesh Hashem bekirbenu min ayin. Is God with us or not? Like mind blown. You saw the plagues. You saw the splitting of the sea. You saw the water become sweet. You have manna falling out of heaven. You have a rock that travels with you, giving you water for millions of people in a desert. And you're asking, is Hashem with us? Are you nuts? How could they ask such a thing? And the rabbi's answer, we might have mentioned this last week. There's emunah and bitachon. What does emunah mean? Belief. And what's bitachon? Security, trust, faith. What's the difference practically between emunah and bitachon? Did we discuss this last week? Yeah. One is the knowledge, one is living that knowledge. The Jewish people aren't saying, is there God or not? Hayesh Hashem b'kirbenu. Is Hashem inside of us? Are we living? They're seeing it day in, day out, but are we living it? When it comes tough times, when someone's not well, we trust that Hashem runs the show. That Hashem's with us. No matter how dark it might be, no matter how challenging it might be. It almost doesn't help to see. They saw the splitting of the sea, and 3 days later they're complaining. So knowing isn't enough. What do we need to do? Hashem gives us tests sometimes so that we can constantly live our knowledge. He puts us in tough situations that we have to turn to Hashem. We have to pray to Hashem. We know that Hashem's the only one that can help. It doesn't matter how much you exercise, doesn't matter how wealthy you are, doesn't matter. Hashem's the only one that could help in this situation. I've davened to Hashem. And the women have this much more than the men. The women have this bitachon much more. It's naturally in the women, right? We learn all tefillah from Chana, v'titpalel Chana. Women naturally are more God-like, but they're also closer to Hashem. They were created last. They were a higher creation, if you will. Men need to work harder. The women are standing there by the Yam Suf. And they're about to be killed. And what are the women holding? Drums, tambourines. I have no doubt the men were like, what the heck are you doing? Hashem's going to save us. We're just getting ready. You're crazy. How is Hashem going to save us? I don't know. That's his problem. He'll sort it out. I was telling someone we have the Chazak and we're doing aim, and I said the budget next year is going to be 1.2 to 1.3 million. He's like, how do you sleep at night? I'm like, really well. Hashem's in charge. I need to do my hishtadu. Hashem runs the show. But what about Hashem's in charge? Hashem's got plenty of money. Hashem's got anything he wants at his disposal to cure people, to help people in their shalom bayit, and the challenges they might have with their children, the challenges they might have with fertility, challenges they might have with shidduchim, challenges they might have with finances. Hashem's in charge. The Jewish people, they knew it. They can't not know it. When there's manna falling out of heaven, when you have clouds of glory protecting you, as we see in this week's parasha. We did a few years ago, Achnasa Sefer Torah, and we sold each parasha. And someone said to me, Rabbi, if you could buy any parasha, what would you buy? Any parasha. I said, probably Parashat Beshalach. They said, why? I said, it has the pasuk, the Az Yashir. It has the pasuk, Ani Hashem Rofecha. It says, Kol HaMachala Shesamti Mitzrayim Lo Asim Alecha, Ki Ani Hashem Rofecha. It talks about Hashem being our doctor, our healer. Right? You have the parasha of the man. You have the war against Amalek. You have so many epic things in this week's parasha. Man is representative of Parnasa. Right? Money coming from heaven or food coming from heaven. There's so much, this week's parasha, loaded. But the Jewish people seem to have schizophrenia. They believe, they don't believe. They believe, they don't believe. There's no doubt they 100% believe, and now they're complaining. We're human beings. And as human beings, life can be overwhelming sometimes. It can be challenging. What do we need to do? You want to be happy? You want to have peace of mind? We just constantly need to talk about and strengthen our bitachon. We live the emunah, as we mentioned last week, with tzaddik be'emunato yechyeh. What makes somebody a tzaddik? Emunah. They take the emunah yechyeh, they live it. This week's parasha, the Jewish people, often people say, well, if I lived in that generation, of course I'd be religious. If I lived in that generation, of course I'd be the most modest, most amazing tzaddik or tzaddikit or unbelievable. They had miracles for them 24/7. And yet, it almost didn't help. Because the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says they had 10 tests and they failed every one. But they're seeing miracles. That's not what makes people become who they are. It's not the miracles. It's the making the decisions when you see the miracles that day in, day out, I'm not going to let these things bother me when they come up. I'm going to make sure that I trust in Hashem. I'm going to make sure that no matter what the situation is, I'm going to be happy. Because I understand Hashem is the one giving me this test. Hashem's there with me. That's what the Jewish people understand. Hashem he's the one running the show. The ladies, they're standing there with drums and tambourines. The men think they're crazy because the men have a different role. The men came home saying Hashem runs the show, but the women are the ones who take this hashkafa, this hashpa'ah, and they bring it to fruition. So when it comes to the children, as we said, teaching them the brachot, when it comes to our families and even the men are out there in the big bad world, and it's not always easy, and it's a dog-eat-dog world, and times now aren't. They come home, they've had a long day, and first of all, ideally, you give them some space. I always tell the men, when you come home, if you get home at 6 or 6:30, not going to make a difference. Take a few minutes, because you know when you come home, there's a war, not with the wife, but just it's balagan, and you need to take over, right? But at the same time, the woman hopefully is giving and saying, take a few minutes, right? The guy doesn't want to talk about his day. He has to relive it. You want to hear about his day. You want to tell him about your day, right? The guy probably doesn't care about your day. with all due respect, not in a bad way. He just wants a break. If there's a problem, chances are, what's he going to do? You come and you tell him, she said this, and I can't believe that, and this was, and he'll give you a bunch of solutions, right? You're not looking for solutions. She's not looking for solutions, right? Why? Because the man's job is to give. So he thinks if you're coming to him with a problem, he's going to give. Right? Again, all men are guilty of this, myself included. Even if we know, it doesn't help if you know. The more you do it, right? They tell a story of this guy. The rabbi sees him and he seems very upset. He says, "What happened?" He says, "I don't understand. I'm married, and every time my wife says to me, her friend did this, her sister did that, the neighbor did this, and I say, okay, so why don't we go by this and we'll take care of this?" And she just gets upset at me. I'm fixing the situation. And the rabbi said, she's not looking for answers. She wants you to say, "Oh man, that's not easy. I'm proud of you. It's a tough one. Keep up the good work. It's going to be good. It's going to be okay." Guy comes home and he sees his wife on a ladder and she's trying to reach this light bulb that he said for the past 3 months he's going to change. And it's like falling. And the guy says, "You're doing a great job, sweetie. Really proud of you. I know it's not easy." Guys don't know. They don't understand. They don't think differently. Hashem gave us different roles to play. But it's the woman's role to take the hashkafa, the ideology, the Torah, and make sure it permeates throughout the home. In the tzniut, in the kashrut, in where you go on holiday, and in the way we talk. Baruch Hashem, Bezat Hashem, Emir Hashem. Women have that naturally much more. They're God-like. They're more compassionate, more caring, more thoughtful. Men need to do more to be more woman-like or be more God-like. To be more compassionate, more thoughtful, more caring. And that's why men have more mitzvah. That's why men need to go to shul 3 times a day. That's why men need to go learn more. Right? We have different roles to play. And if we understand that, right? I did a whole debate when I was in Hasmo Girls. The school was talking about equality. I said, there needs to be equality of opportunity. But we're not equal. Right? My kids, my son and my daughter. Right? Boys are better than girls. Girls are better. And they look at me and I'm like, both. Girls aren't better. Women are much greater in certain ways. It doesn't matter. We have different roles to play. It's not about being equal. It's understanding these different responsibilities that we each need to bring to the table. And if we appreciate that and work together, then you have Yanu Chubam. It's together. It's one big, strong foundation and hopefully happy home. If each person's trying to keep score. I did this, this, and this. Well, I did this, this, and this. Right? My wife was upset at me. I said, she's like, "You told everybody that I went to Miami for 5 days and you watched all the kids." I'm like, "I'm waiting for my certificate." She's like, "You don't need a certificate. Whoever comes for wigs, they're like, I heard your husband." I'm like, I need a lot of credit over here, right? Baruch Hashem. Everyone has different roles to play. I kid around, but you don't keep score. I did this, and he said that, and how come that, and your mother this. Nobody's going to win. We're here together. We have different roles to play. The women, as we see in this week's parasha, Meshum Nashim Tzidkaniyot, it's the righteous women. The men were complaining, and the women are sitting there holding drums and tambourines, ready to celebrate. They say the first redemption is the template and the blueprint for the final redemption. It's the women that are going to make it happen. It's your responsibility. The men come and they say, in shul, the rabbi said this, and then the women bring it to fruition. The man is the mashpia, the woman is the receiver and the creator. And if we do that, if we each fulfill our roles properly, we understand that we think differently, we talk differently. I always tell Khatanim, when your wife says, "We need to take out the garbage," Habibi, you, we need to buy milk. You go buy milk, right? It's a different language, Baruch Hashem. But we think differently, we talk differently, but we have different roles to play. And as long as we appreciate that and work together, then Be'ezat Hashem, we won't just talk about redemption, we'll be zocheh. The final Gulam, Amen. Amen.